2 a.m. and she calls me 'cause I'm still awake. Can you help me unravel my latest mistake? Dropped a stitch about 17 rows behind me. There's no way I can pick it up from where I am. This is so frustrating. I feel I should just slam it down on the table and walk away.
Hello and welcome to the Sittin' and Knittin' podcast.
And here's your host, Dianna.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Today is Thursday, August 1st, 2013, and I'm broadcasting to you from overcast Southwest Ohio. It's in the upper 70s, not really sunny, but it's a beautiful day. I am so glad that you are taking the time to sit and knit with me. There are lots of video podcasts to watch and audio podcasts to listen to, and so I appreciate you choosing to spend some time with me. I want to welcome back returning viewers, and I would also like to welcome new viewers and just thank you for giving me a try. If you enjoy the podcast, send me an email or a private message. My contact information will be on the blog, and the blog can be found at sittinandknittingpodcast.blogspot.com. I was looking back through a few of the past episodes, and it seems like I spend a lot of time at the beginning giving my contact information, so I will just leave all that on the blog. If I didn't say it before, I am Dianna, his handmaid on Ravelry, and where you can find me on the different social medias, all that contact information will be at the blog, sittinandknittingpodcast.blogspot.com. So today, if anything looks different for returning viewers from the way the show usually starts, it's because my girls are away. They've been away all week at a teen revival meeting in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And so I don't have an editor here. So I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to go ahead and try to edit this myself or just put it up as is. So there may not be the music and the intro and the exit, because my daughter Journey usually does all my editing, and I really don't know how to do it. So if anything looked different when it started off or when it ends, that's what's going on. So let's go ahead and get right into what we have to talk about. First of all, I will draw for our July share contest. We had a thread open where I wanted you to share what is your favorite birthday memory. I've been having a hard time the past, probably started the past 2 months. My birthday is at the end of next week. I'm having a little hard time about turning 40. And so I just was asking for you all to share your favorite birthday memory. And I do want to start this off by saying I'm not ungrateful. I have good health and I feel good. I don't have any aches and pains, and I'm very thankful for my health. And just I know to reach 40 years is a blessing. So I'm not really sure why I feel like, just feel heavy about turning 40. 35 was excellent. I don't know why I feel heavy about turning 40, but I got a real pick me up by reading everyone's birthday memories and just everything that you shared with me and the nice comments in the thread. So we had 25 entries, and I'm going to use a random number generator this time, and I already pulled it up, and I have 2. I'll start with 2 since I was post number 1 through 25, and I will hit generate, and the winner is number 14. I will look on my iPad, and number 14 is Knit Fantasy. So I believe her name is Valerie. Valerie, congratulations. You have won a $10 Etsy gift certificate. I forgot that's what this month's prize is. So contact me, and I will let you know how I will get your Etsy gift certificate to you. Thank you, everyone who posted. I also want to say at the beginning of the podcast, I'm not podcasting to have a one-way conversation. I'm sharing with you, but I love when you share with me. I love when you comment on the Ravelry group or when you send me private messages or emails. I love it when you share, like when you finish your project or you're working on your project on Ravelry and there's a little tab on the right hand side that says share it with the group. I love when you share your projects with the group. It generates community, and that's what I love about podcasting. So I wanted to, sometimes I forget to say that, but please don't just watch me, but please share back with me. I'm not just trying to dominate the conversation. So we'll get right into what's out of my hands. And if you haven't noticed, I am finished with the calligraphy cardigan. I am very excited. I knit the calligraphy cardigan by Hannah Fettig. It is, I think it's a paid for pattern. You can download it on Ravelry. I knit it out of Daisy Knits Nectar Base. It's a DK weight yarn in her Nectar Base, which is 85% Polworth and 15% silk. I believe that's the content. And I use my US size 3 needles, and I went up a needle size for the sleeves. I used the US 4 because I know that I knit tighter in the round than I do flat. What else did I? Let me go ahead and show you. I am very pleased with how it turned out. I copied, this is how it lays in the back. I feel like the camera is adding more pounds to me than what it really is. What I really am. I feel like I look bigger. I like the waist decreases. I've never done waist shaping before, and so I really like that. I wish I had done the cuffs just a wee bit longer. I think I can stretch them a little longer. I didn't put as many buttons as the pattern called for. It called for buttons here, and I didn't want buttons there. And I think she called for one more button down here. But I usually don't like a button that far to the bottom. So this is how I like it. I measured one of my favorite store-bought sweaters, and took the measurements from the underarm to the wrist and from the underarm down to the waist, how long I wanted it, and it just came out perfect. And I thought, I have those measurements saved on my phone, but if I make another top-down kind of vanilla sweater, I like the way the decreases are in here, and I took really detailed notes on my pattern page, and I thought I need to write those notes down exactly what I did so that I can just have it for a generic, sweater shaping. But me, as soon as I'm done, I started putting everything away, and I believe I threw away my pattern because I have it, saved on my computer and saved on Ravelry. So I can always print it out again, and I think I threw it away. And I was thinking about it and looking for it last night and thinking, oh, I wish I had wrote down my notes exactly, what I had did. But Hannah has the waist shaping in there, so I can always, and I do have my notes from my favorite sweater. So anyway, I like it. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about is, the way that there's not really gapping. I think I put the buttonholes, I think 2.5 inches apart, I think is what she's called for, or maybe 3 inches apart. But just right here, I was thinking maybe the buttonholes needed to be a little closer to the edge of the sweater so that I wouldn't have this here. I'm not sure, but um, that was the only thing that I would change. I'd never done a buttonhole like this. They are vertical buttonholes, and it was an interesting construction, the way that I had to do the buttonholes. And it wasn't hard. I just had never done a buttonhole like that, and I enjoyed it very much. So I think that's all I have to say about this FO. Um, I am very, very, very excited to have it done. Picking up the stitches, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Um, I thought, maybe I didn't pick up enough at the corners, but it seems like it's come out fine. So the yarn is beautiful. I did not alternate skeins. I think we talked about this before. So I finished like the first ball came to right here, and then the second ball started, after I had divided for the sleeves, where it looks a little bit lighter. So I can kind of see it a little bit, but I think it looks fine. I really think it looks beautiful. And so I used the ball for up here on the sleeves so that, I don't know, I kind of blended it together, but I didn't alternate every row. So up here in the sleeves is one ball, and then the body is another ball. I think that's how it goes. And even I think on the sleeves, right here is the second ball. So it's really, really beautiful yarn. And I love it. And I think if I don't knit another calligraphy, I will knit something like it. It was a beautifully written pattern. Just follow the directions. It was easy and satisfying. So there is my calligraphy cardigan. My second out of my hands is the For Good hat. I had talked to you before about doing a hat for Halos of Hope. I will be volunteering in the Halos of Hope booth at Stitches Midwest. Hopefully, I'll be able to go. There looks like there might be a conflict that I'm hoping to work out, but I'll know for sure next week. But I'm looking forward to being able to go to Stitches Midwest. And last episode, I showed you I was doing a free hat on Ravelry called Christian's Hat. And I was talking about how my knitting attacked me. I think I had to cast on 104 stitches on worsted weight yarn, and it ended up seeming like it was loose. I had a picture of it on my husband, and it was loose on his bald head. And so I had kind of thought I had in mind for this color that it would be more for a woman. So I commented on Halos of Hope, and they said that 22 inches was their max. And so I think they wanted the hats, 22 inches was the max. And it was right at 22, and I didn't know if it was stretch or whatever. So I hemmed and hawed and didn't know what to do, and I decided to go ahead and rip it out because it wasn't what I had in mind. And so I picked up another pattern. It is the For Good hat. It's called the For Good hat, and it's by Megan Williams, who is a co-host of the Stockinette Zombies podcast. And you can purchase the pattern on Ravelry. Megan used the proceeds for this hat to donate to a charity that does research for women's diseases. I believe that's what it is. She knit the hat in memory of her sister who passed away a few years ago. So I have been wanting to knit this hat for a while, and I decided that, the For Good hat would be a perfect hat for a chemo hat. So here it is, finished. This is knit out of Madeline Tosh sock in the ginger colorway, and I doubled the yarn because the For Good hat calls for worsted weight yarn, so I doubled the fingering to worsted weight, It's a really stretchy hat. The model that I have is my son, who has a rather large head. So I feel like it can fit maybe a teenage girl, that doesn't have, it's not really a child size hat. Um, I believe I knit the large. I think that is what I knit. It comes from children's to adults. And let me see if I can pull this up for you real quick. And if I have the size that I knit. Oh, I knit the small. So this is the small. So it'll fit a young child or a teenager. It stretches. It was an intuitive pattern. It was very easy. Not very easy, but it was interesting enough that I really enjoyed it. The way that Megan wrote the pattern, at first it was hard for me to get into the rhythm of the pattern, and I kept thinking, I was looking at the knits and pearls. It's an alternate of knits and pearls, and I kept looking at them in pattern. But the way Megan had it written, she had it written in numbers. She had the pattern broken down every 10 stitches, where I was thinking, okay, we should do, for example, 2 pearls, 3 knits, 3 pearls. I probably would have had all the pearls together and then all the knits together, but she was looking at it mathematically, and she had it as the number. She broke the stitches down as a number. So when I understood what the designer was doing, then I was able to catch on. And so I just felt like, it was a learning, growing experience, and I enjoyed knitting the hat, and it made me wonder, miss knitting hats. I haven't knit hats very often. I enjoyed doing the decreases, and it has a little button band for buttons if you want, and it came out great. It is so squishy and soft. Did I wash this? I don't think I have washed this yet, so I will wash it before I take it to the Halos of Hope booth at Stitches. I think that's all there is to tell about that. I really, really, really enjoyed knitting it. The color is not coming up. It's a little more orangey than what it's showing up on the camera. So that was that. And that felt good to accomplish that. It didn't take me more than a couple of days to knit it. And it was an enjoyable knit. The next thing that I have out of my hands is Mom's Prayer Shawl. Prayer Shawl is made out of Barocco Comfort and the worsted weight. I did not write show notes, but now I'm thinking that I should have had this all written down. It's Barocco Comfort and the purple colorway, and then also Premier Yarn Serenity Sock Garden in the hydrangea colorway, which I didn't realize it was a striping yarn or self-striping yarn. And so I just did the original prayer shawl, where you knit 3, purl 3, and I held a strand of the worsted weight Barocco and a strand of the sock weight Serenity Garden. And it is finished. The girls and I were knitting it together. The girls kind of stalled out a little bit. I finished this last night just because I wanted to have 3 projects to enter into. Different podcasts I watch have finished object contest, where if you finish an object in the month, you can enter it into the contest. I could have easily entered it in for August, but I just worked hard to get it done last night. I wanted to have 3 FOs for this month. So what I didn't get to say last podcast, because the girls were sitting here, was Justice is still recovering some from her surgery. So her knitting is not always even, and she drops stitches and different things like that. But so you can see some holes in it where the girls and I were knitting on it. I would do an hour, and each of the girls would do an hour. We had tried to get it done in one day, but we couldn't get it done. And so we have been working on it when we have time. We saw Mom last week, but it wasn't done. Let me see if I can show show you the back. And so it's just something for her to throw around her shoulders at the office. I think it came out very nice. It surprised me with the striping, and it's just very cozy and comfortable. And we used 2 balls of the Barocco Comfort. It was 420 yards for both of them, I think. So, and then we didn't use quite 2 balls of the Serenity sock. This is super wash. I did throw it in the washer and got it wet, and then I hung it to block it, and then I threw it in the dryer just a little bit. So, it's just knit 3, purl 3. You can see in some places, like I said, when Justice or Journey were maybe not paying attention and they got a little off on the pattern or whatever, but I think it shows our love and our prayer for Mom. She's been going through just difficult, nothing major, just difficult circumstances, and she's been a real blessing to us. And so, I wanted to bless her. I have made her a couple other shawls, and I sewed the buttons on this Sunday when I saw her, and I went over to her house, and she asked how come I don't make her a sweater, and she wants me to make her a sweater. So my dad asked for a sweater too. So we'll see. It takes lots and lots of work to make a sweater just for myself, and I enjoy it so much. And so it just kind of cracks me up that they're asking me like I can just whip out a sweater. So that is all that's out of my hands. What is in my hands? What I'm working on right now, I'll start with a half-finished object. I'm working on Hermione's Everyday Socks, and I'm knitting this out of Lorna's Laces and her multi. It's a Hermione's Everyday Sock by Erica Luder. And I'm knitting it out of Lorna's Laces Shepherd Sock multi in the purple iris colorway. And I have one sock finished. I think last time I saw you, I had just finished the gusset decreases. So here's the cuff. It's about, did I write it down? I think it's about 7 or 8 inches. It's a pretty long cuff. It may even be longer than that. This is my first adult heel flap. So I usually do a Fleagle heel. This is my heel flap. I do not like the way the yarn pulled at the instep while I was doing the heel flap. I do not like that at all. But I do like, because I didn't think it was going to stripe because the color changes are so short, I do like how it's striped at the foot. So that came out. I'm pleased with it. It's comfortable and cozy. I can't wait to get the other one done. I did decide to go ahead and just do a stockinette foot. I'm not sure. I just had enough yarn to finish this. The skein has 435 yards, and I split it evenly into 2 balls. I put the whole ball on my kitchen scale, and then I wound off. I think it was a 100-gram ball, and I wound off whatever it was. I just divided it in half and wound off half of it. So I just had a tiny bit left. I'm wondering if I had did the pattern on the foot, if it would have taken more yarn. But I like a longer cuff, and so now I know that when I get sock yarn, that I need at least 425 yards to get me a good size sock. I think I prefer doing top down, and when you do top down, you never know how long you can knit the cuff before you run out of yarn. So I was kind of taking a chance. I always knew, that I still had the other ball, so if I needed some more yarn, I could take from the other ball and then kind of, budget for the second sock. But so that's done, and I've been enjoying knitting that. That's kind of been my purse knitting. I do have the second one. I had it started for a while. I'll go ahead and show it to you. It has not changed much from the last time you saw it. I was doing them two at a time on two different needles, and then I just kind of condensed it. So I just have it on the needles and have my stitch marker, and it's all ready for me to sit down and knit. I really like this pattern. It's not a vanilla pattern, but it's mindless enough to keep you interested. And so I think I will be knitting it again. I think it's a perfect pattern for a variegated sock yarn. So I really, really like that. The next thing, if you recall, I had sweater woes for a sweater that I'm going to be knitting. I am knitting for my mom's coworker, and I talked about the different. I won't go back over it. It's in episode 21. I don't know if I said this is episode 22, but just different sweaters I was trying. I went from the Gramps cardigan to the baby sophisticate to the child's placket pullover. I have started again. I had a frogging party, so to speak, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I did go ahead and frog that sweater where I had started it flat until I got to the underarm decreases, and then I was supposed to join it and knit it in the round, and how my gauge, flat gauge, was a lot different than my round gauge. So I did decide to go ahead and rip that back, and I decided to do another sweater. This sweater that I'm doing is out of the Kids Knitted Sweaters and More by Cabin Fever's Design. This is a book I have had for several years, and I am doing the Cameron sweater. It does not say who it's written by particularly, just Cabin Fever Design, and I decided to do this Cameron sweater. It is a bottom up sweater. I am not going to do the stripes, but you knit your ribbing and then you knit your stockinette stitch from the bottom up, and then it has a rib pattern up here at the yoke. And what is different, it's Cabin Fever emphasizes that they do seamless sweater construction or seamless construction. But what is different about this sweater that I haven't done before is when I get to the underarms, I will divide and I will do the front and the back, which I'm familiar with, but then I will be knitting the shoulders and the neck, because it kind of wants to have like it's going for a rounded shoulder look, it said. And so I will be knitting the shoulders and the neck different from the front and the back. And I don't think I've ever done that before. So that should be interesting. And then I will pick up and do the neckband. And then you pick up the sleeves and knit them from the top down. I'm used to, when I do bottom up sweaters, I've done a few for children, of knitting the sleeves bottom up and then connecting them here. But actually, after I finish the yoke, then I will pick up the sleeves and knit them from the top down. So that will be interesting. I'm looking forward to trying that. And I guess you want to see how far I've gotten. So I did print out the pattern, so I wouldn't have to carry the book around. And it is a paid for pattern, so I won't give you a lot of detail, but it seems like it's going to be interesting. So I do the back, the front, and then work sides of neck and both shoulders at the same time. So that'll be interesting. And then I have to join the shoulders, and I'm not sure what I'm joining them to. I will just be following the pattern and looking forward to learning. So I'm knitting this out of Daisy Knits in her Nectar Base DK weight, the same yarn that I used for the calligraphy cardigan, but this is in her Blue Sky colorway. And I am knitting this on US size 3. That's another thing. The pattern calls for worsted weight yarn, and I have DK weight yarn, and I went through this before, but I am following the stitch count for the size 2. I'm going for a size 1, and I cross-checked it on other DK weight 12-month size children's sweaters, And at this gauge that I'm getting, the numbers seem to kind of match. So I think I'm going to be okay with it, even though I'm following the stitch count for the 2-year-old pattern. I'm only going to follow the measurements as far as length for the body and the sleeves and such for the 1-year-old pattern. And I think it'll give me a size 1 sweater, which is what 12 month is what I'm looking for. So this is where I've gotten so far. The yarn is more blue sky than it's showing here. I think maybe that's a little more true to color. I have about, I think this is about 6 inches and I'm supposed to knit for 8. I think that's how it goes. Or maybe 4 and I'm supposed to knit for 6. I have a couple of more inches to go on here. I'm knitting it on magic loop. I would prefer to knit it in the round, but I would need 20-inch circular needles and I don't have any, so I'm knitting it magic loop, but I'm almost done and then I'll be dividing for the front and the back, so it really won't matter a whole lot anyway. There is a purl round at the bottom and then a purl round at the top. I think that's about all I have to say about this. I think this is what's been taking up a lot of my knitting time. I'm enjoying the yarn. It's it's one of my favorites. I know I've gone on and on and on about it. It's one of my favorites yarns to knit with. I wanted to show you right here. I had talked about woes before on having ladders with magic loop. And it's funny that I have ladders on one side than I do on another. Right here, I don't know if you can see, there's a little, I don't know what this is right here. Just kind of loose stitches. I was thinking about dropping down and laddering back up with my crochet hook. I was thinking about ripping it back, but I'll see how it comes out in blocking. This is superwash yarn. I don't know if I said that. This I haven't put in the dryer. I laid it flat, but it is superwash yarn. And so we'll just see how it goes. And I think that's all I have for my knitting. As far as my wow and goodie bag is kind of together and kind of along with aspirations. What I'm aspiring to knit next. And what I'm aspiring to knit next on my birthday, which is next Friday, I have been longing for and looking at a yarn for a very long time. It's from Inspiration Dye Works and it's their mint chocolate chip stripe yarn. And I first saw this yarn when Kim, who is the host of the Craft Stash video podcast, she had made a pair of socks. And as soon as I saw those socks, mint chocolate chip is my favorite ice cream, and I just thought the yarn was so beautiful. And I've been just stalking her page for a while, the Etsy shop, Inspiration Dye Works. But every time I went there, it looked like that yarn was just special order. Well, I got a surprise in the mail from Lisa, who is Lass Knit 2, LAS Knit 2 on Ravelry. I got a surprise in the mail last week. I was just getting ready to order this yarn for a special for my birthday. And lo and behold, Lisa sent it to me. I was just so floored and just so very overwhelmed and very thankful. So this is, it's from Inspiration Dye Works and it's her basic sock. And she can be found on Etsy at inspirationdyeworks.etsy.com. And there is 463 yards. So I'm going to make a nice long cuff and I'm going to make I'm going to make just vanilla socks. I'm thinking of doing a 3x1 rib, which is still vanilla to me. And it is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. It's absolutely beautiful and it makes me happy to look at it. And I am just so excited. I think there's 3 colors in the stripes. It looks like a darker chocolate, a lighter chocolate, and then a green. I think that's what it is. I am so excited to use this. I'm just really, really excited. So I will be casting these on my birthday. I will be taking them with me down to Stitches, and if I get there, and I am just very excited. So thank you very, 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 very much, Lisa. That was really a pick me up. So that is all I'm planning on casting on next. Um, I also need to finish my calligraphy, or not my calligraphy, Mr. Green Jeans, which is a pattern that I'm knitting from Knitty. It's a free pattern, but I'll talk more about that in Knitting Circle. And the boys are just coming in from outside, so I need to hurry up and wrap this up. Let me hold this, pause you for a minute so I can make sure the boys are quiet. Okay, I'm back. On my iPod, or on my iPad, I wanted to talk about a couple of podcasts. This is not a new podcast, but it's an audio podcast that I listen to. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before. Maybe I should have went back and checked. It's called Ready, Set, Knit, and it's hosted by Kathy and Steve Elkin, who are the owners of Webb's Yarn Store. That's in, I think it's located in Massachusetts, and it has the online web shop, and it's a short, maybe half hour podcast where Kathy will do different interviews with uh, popular people from the knitting community, and then Steve will talk about the yarns that they have in the shop. I enjoy it. It's short and quick, and I learn a lot, and I love hearing from different designers and web shop owners or yarn store owners and different things like that. So I kind of usually steer away from podcasts that are hosted by yarn store owners or even Etsy shop owners, because I feel like that most of the podcast is where they try to sell you what they have, and that's not really what I tune into podcasts for. But Steve and Kathy have a good mix, and a lot of times, especially if I'm listening to older episodes, I may skip Steve's part where he's talking about the new yarns he has, or if I'm up to date on the podcast and I think there's coming a time that I'd like to do some yarn shopping, then I may listen. So it's easy to kind of do that with a short, to the point, sweet podcast. So that's Ready, Set, Knit. And I usually listen to that on my iPod Touch, in my vehicle. Another new video podcast is called The Knitting Dish. It has 5 episodes, and it is hosted by Mary, and you can find it at knittingdish.com. And Mary is a very good knitter, and she knits some interesting projects, and she knits some beautiful mittens and shawls, and she's fun and has a bright personality, and I would advise you to take a look at her podcast. So that's Knitting Dish at knittingdish.com. And I believe she's Woolly Bear on Ravelry. As far as what I'm listening to or reading, I did finish up The Summer on Blossom Street, so I'm glad to be kind of done with the Blossom Street series. It was really just kind of, lightweight reading, and but I'm one that really likes to get through a series, so I finished that. I think I finished that. The children were at Vacation Bible School last week. And so I had 2.5 hours to myself, and I would go to the park and sit and knit and just listen to the book. And that's when I finished the hat too. So I was reading No Idle Hands. I showed you that book. And I just had not had a chance. I only had a little time to read a couple pages here and there. It's time to take it back to the library. I've read it before, when the children were younger and I was nursing a lot and I had more time to sit down. So Aunt T had commented in the Ravelry group that she had treated herself to the audio version from Amazon. And as soon as I get done podcasting, that's what I plan to do. Is just go ahead. I love audiobooks. I think it's something that I would listen to again and again. And so I'm going to just go ahead and get the audio version and listen to it that way. So that is where I am with some of my reading. Our ASL minute. I don't want to continue to be a dead horse, but my birthday is what's on my mind, so I just thought I'd teach you how to sign happy birthday if you meet someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, and you want, and it's their birthday, you want to say happy birthday. I think we've done the sign for happy. So happy, you kind of rub your hand on your heart like this. You start from the bottom and go out like twice. Happy. Some people do it with two hands. Happy. Happy. And then for birthday, you take your middle finger, which is your feeling finger, and you touch your chin and your chest. Birthday. Birthday. So it'd be happy birthday or happy birthday. Another way to sign birthday is to say your arrival day. So it'd be happy birthday. So you would have your non-dominant hand, the hand that you don't use flat, and you show it. This shows arrival. This is another sign for arrival, or when you were born, or showing up. So your arrival day. Day is your non-dominant arm here and your dominant hand here, and you have the D. We talked about the ASL alphabet D, and you bring day right here. You start day at the top and you bring it down. So it can be happy birthday or happy birthday. Another way, I'll show you one more because it's kind of neat, is the day that you entered into the world. So you were born. You were born or you entered. So another way that some older ASL users will sign it would be happy birthday. So for born, you would have, or enter, you would have your non-dominant hand flat here, and your other hand is kind of coming into the world. And it kind of reminds me of a baby coming out. I just think it's a neat sign. So happy birthday. And that's our ASL minute. As far as what I wanted to talk about for ASL, or for our knitting circle, and I would like for you to weigh in on this too. I have totally, after my knitting, I felt like I was just under siege from my knitting. And I had titled my last episode When Knitting Attacks, and I just really felt like my knitting was against me. Not that my knitting was against me, but that I was kind of under defeat, or I just kept running into roadblocks and kept running into different issues. And so I stepped back away from my knitting, and I thought, why? At this point in my life, I still have, I have a couple of part-time jobs, and, the children and the housework and different things like that. And I just really feel like I cannot concentrate on my knitting the way that I want to. I love to knit. I knit any chance I get, and knitting is kind of an escape for me. It makes me feel, and I've talked about it before, it makes me feel productive, and it kind of helps me to kind of regroup my thoughts and kind of, just zone in the midst of, my faith is very strong, and I don't feel like knitting helps me cope in a way where prayer and my faith in the Lord doesn't. But I'm talking about in the middle of the day where you're not going to go into a room and close your eyes and bow your head and get on your knees and pray. But I'm talking about in the middle of life circumstances, when I need to spend time with the children, when I need to be concentrating, when I need to be social, but at the same time I'm feeling overwhelmed or feeling busy or feeling that's, when I pick up my knitting, and I just enjoy knitting. Every time I knit, I know there's a big thing about knitting without looking and knitting speed and different things like that. But when I knit, a lot of times I'm all with each stitch. I enjoy the process of knitting. I always wonder, how can I improve my knitting? With each stitch, I may think, how could I have done that stitch better? Or I think about how the fabric is feeling in my hands, or I stop and look at a lot what fabric I'm producing. So, um, knitting, it's hard to explain what knitting is to me, but I felt like maybe, I don't know if it's the podcast, and I was feeling like I had performance anxiety or what. I just felt like I needed to downsize. And I'm that type of person. In my home, if I don't use something within a year, if I don't use it winter, spring, summer, fall, within a year, I'll throw it away. And then a year and a half later, I may be looking for it. But I'm not a person that keeps a lot of clutter. I don't keep a lot of clutter in my caller ID box or in my messages. That's just not me. So I stood back and I looked at my knitting and I thought, where do I want to be with my knitting? I'd rather knit one or two projects and knit them really well and learn new techniques and get those new techniques down. Really, I want to be a good knitter. Why do I want to be a good knitter? I like to produce beautiful things. And, I have I had a 9-page queue full of all kinds of beautiful sweaters that I want to knit with intricate cable patterns and different techniques and things like that. But right now, at this time in my life, just for me, I can't do it. I was talking to my friend and she was saying, well, you have a lot of irons in the fire, or so to speak. And, you have a lot of things that are going on. I said, but I know other knitters who are busy moms and work full-time jobs, and they're still able to crank out designs and, intricate knitting patterns and things like that. But I don't need to compare myself with anybody else. That's just not where I am right now. So I went through my queue and I deleted I just cleaned out a lot of the sweaters that I admire, that I love, but that I know I'm not going to be able to knit right now. Maybe, in 5 years when the boys are older or something, I will be able to do that. But for right now, I just kind of wanted to condense everything and just concentrate on, instead of having my knitting. I guess what I was saying in the beginning is my knitting helped me to kind of zone in and kind of focus when everything around me is just busy, busy, busy. So when I come to my knitting to zone in and focus, if I've got this here and this here and that here, and I'm spending all this time on this pattern, and I just, you know, I'm looking at the chart and then somebody comes and says something to me and I mess it up and I rip it back or whatever it is that's going on. That's just not for me for right now. So, I did frog one of my sweaters. I know this is summer of the sweater and I had cast on 3 sweaters in 3 different weights of yarn. I did frog my fingering weight sweater, which was the Abigail Party by Cicely Glowich McDonald, I believe. And the only reason why I frogged that is because that was another thing. I was kind of disappointed when I knit this calligraphy because it came out more fitted than what I had thought. I thought it was going to be a loose coat-like sweater. Even though it's DK, I'm used to wearing looser fitting clothes. And so as I was knitting it and trying it on, I was getting more and more discouraged because it just seemed like it was I was going off of the knit to flatter and to knit to my size instead of always knitting with a whole lot of ease. One thing that I've learned, say my size is a 38 bust. Well, I would always knit maybe a 42 because I always had my clothes nice and loose, not even looking at what the ease is on the sweater. And I haven't knit a lot of sweaters, but even when I go shopping, if I know that I wear a large, I would always get a 2X just because I wanted that ease. Um, with this, I think it had a 2 inches of ease. So I knit for my proper bust. I knit a 38 where before I probably would have knit a 42. And, it fits well, but I'm not used to the fit of it, of, 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 um, of my clothes fitting like this. And, but I'm learning to, since I've lost weight and everything like that, I'm learning to be comfortable with where I am. That being said, I had cast on the 38 for the Abigail Cardi, and it's supposed to be a looser, open sweater, and I just felt like I wouldn't be happy with the way that I felt like I knit the wrong size. So I ripped it. Long story short, I ripped it. And I do plan on, I love the cakewalk yarns and I love the pattern, and I enjoyed the pattern, and I do plan on casting that back on again. But it was just it was stressful to me. And so, it's yarn, it's knitting, and I frogged it. And so at the same time I frogged that, I had frogged the sweater, the child's placket pullover. I have frogged that, and I have frogged that Christian's hat. And I just said I am only going to concentrate on one or two patterns at a time, and I am going to do them really well, and I am going to enjoy them. I'm not going to feel like I have to prove anything to me or, prove anything to anybody else, but I want to enjoy my knitting. And I love to learn. And so I look at my knitting since I'm not in school anymore. I always love to learn, so I want to learn from my knitting, and just having a lot of projects going on at a lot of different times where I feel like I'm rushed trying to get a lot of things done. I'm not really learning and enjoying. So I want to learn to be a good knitter just because I want to learn it, not so that I can design, not so that I can knit for a living, because I don't feel like they could pay me enough. I like to give away gifts, but all the time and the care it takes to knit, I see why hand knitwear costs so much. But I want to learn. That's what I want to do. I want to learn, and I want to improve, and I want to grow. And so I enjoy producing knitting, and I enjoy learning. I want to be a very good knitter. So that's where I am on my knitting. I have condensed myself down. I'm going to finish this child sweater. I'm going to finish my Hermione everyday socks. And the only thing that I have up and coming is I'm going to cast on those mint, chocolate chip mint socks. I'm going to finish my Mr. Green jeans, and then I am going to start a design by Juliana, who's Jules Lunder on Ravelry. I know I said I was going to knit her Amina kimono. I really, really, really enjoy that pattern, and I was hoping to get it done before school started, or it started before school started back, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get that done. But she also has another pattern out called Jaquetta, that is a double-breasted sweater that looks um, um, just like something I really want to knit. So those will be one of the two things that I will be knitting, casting on, and that's what I'm aspiring to. So I guess for our August circle, another thing I was thinking about as I'm talking is, and I was watching the latest episode of the Positively Knitting podcast hosted by Nicole, and she was talking about knitting and her lack of knitting lately, and how does knitting affect your life, or does your life affect your knitting? And I think she was saying at this point, her life affected her knitting, and she was going through some different personal things that made her not want to knit. or she just didn't have the desire to knit. And I know 2.5 years ago when I lost Araya, whereas I used to always say, knitting helps me zone and knitting helps me to escape, and knitting is a comfort and different things like that. And it surprised me so much that when I lost Araya, I did not want to knit. For 8 months, I didn't want to knit. I didn't want to pick up knitting needles, and I'm not sure why. I would look at knitting magazines. Um, I would look at patterns. I would peruse Ravelry. I watched podcasts, but I just did not pick up my needles, and I really can't explain it. So at that point in my life did affect my knitting. Um, so I would be interested to hear from you. I know a lot of you are podcasters and different things like that. You get into retreats, you get into the community of knitting. So does that mean that knitting affects your life? Or does your life affect how you knit and what you knit, or when you knit, or if you knit? So for me right now, I would say my knitting was affecting my life, and I'm changing that. I'm changing that to I'm not I would my life right now is going to affect my knitting, because at this stage in my life I can't knit a lot of the things that I want to knit, but I still want to knit. So, and with my life affecting my knitting, I feel like my life is causing me to take charge of my knitting, and I feel much better about it. So that was a long explanation. If you stayed with me this long, I appreciate it very much. I will be back with you in 2 weeks, Lord willing, around the 15th of the month. I will open a thread in the Ravelry group where you can share about your knitting. And also, if you want to comment on anything that I've talked about, please comment under this episode's thread. Send me a private message or an email. And take care, and thank you so much for watching.
2 a.m. and she calls me 'cause I'm still awake. Can you help me unravel my latest mistake?